All right. Good evening and welcome to Were You There? Our Tenebrae Service this year. It is Good Friday, and personally, I believe that this is the most important day in the history of the world. That God not just became human, but God demonstrated His love for us while we were still sinners. Christ died for us. So this is a remarkable and important evening. Before I do begin, I want to make sure and ask everybody to silence your cell phones or turn your cell phones off, or at least for the 30, 45 minutes that we have our service. And I also want to remind everybody is tomorrow morning we have a kind of like a neighborhood Easter egg hunt and hamburger hot dog kind of a thing, and I think we get ready about 9 or 9:30. And so if you can be here at that time to help us hide Easter eggs, get all set up, and it'll be a good time for the kids. On Sunday morning, we have a sunrise service. If it's not raining, we will be outside. If it is raining, we'll be inside. Either way, the sun is shining and rising on Easter Sunday, and we're going to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. At 7 o'clock is our sunrise service, breakfast at 8 o'clock, and then our regular service will be a joint service with the English and Spanish. We do have a few baptisms that'll be taking place during that service. That service is at 9 o'clock. And so on Facebook, YouTube, and our app, it'll be going on at 9 o'clock. Just a big reminder for you on that. It's a little bit earlier, but we really are looking forward to that service. All right, so if we're ready and everybody has their phone all set, we're good. Tenebrae comes from the medieval Latin word which means darkness or obscurity. It is a service observing the final days of Holy Week, most particularly Good Friday. Tonight, there will be a series of scripture readings along with some meditations and prayers while candles are extinguished, symbolizing the growing darkness of that day. On the night that Jesus was arrested, He said, "When I was with you day after day in the temple, you did not lay hands on me, but this is your hour and the power of darkness." Our service will begin with an old hymn, "Were You There?" And afterwards, we will hear firsthand accounts of people who were there. Each candle represents a life, and each candle also represents the firsthand accounts of those who lived this dark day. These firsthand accounts of the events of that day were gathered to challenge us to reflect on our own lives. As we go through the service tonight, imagine that you were there. We're going to sing a hymn titled, "Were You There?"
Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they nailed Him to the tree? Were you there when they nailed Him to the tree? Tremble, tremble. Were you there when they laid him in the tomb?
My name is Simon, but most know me as Peter, and I was there. I was there in the garden with him that night when he was arrested. Me, along with the brothers James and John, followed Jesus deeper into the garden. He told us that his soul was overwhelmed with sorrow even to the point of death. Then he asked us to keep watch with him. Matthew 26:38. I did not understand what he meant by the words, keep watch. It was really late, and we were the only ones in the garden that night. He left us and went just a little farther away. I could still see him, and he fell to his knees and started to pray. Next thing I know, Jesus was waking us up because we had fallen asleep. I was so embarrassed when he said to me, could you men not keep watch with me for 1 hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak. Matthew 26:40-41. I don't remember falling asleep again, but the next thing I know, Jesus said to me, rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer. Matthew 26:46. It happened so fast. I turned to see Judas, and with him was this large crowd armed with clubs and swords. Judas went up to Jesus and kissed him, and I did not know what was happening until one of the men who came with Judas reached out and seized Jesus. Earlier that evening, I promised Jesus, even if I have to die with him, I will never disown him. That's Matthew 26:35. I thought this was the moment. So I pulled out the sword and struck one of the servants of the high priest. I think his name was Malchus. Jesus looked at me and said, put your sword back in its place. Matthew 26:52. And when they led him away, I followed at a distance and watched as they took him to the house of Caiaphas, the high priest. I waited outside to see the outcome of these events might be. People kept coming up to me and asking if I was one of the disciples. I told them no, but they kept asking. So I called down curses on myself and said, I don't know the man. Matthew 26:74. It was exactly at that moment that the rooster crowed and Jesus turned and looked right at me. I never felt so much shame in my life. Yes, my name is Peter, and I was there.
My name is Pilate, and I was there. I remember that day very well. I was awoken early in the morning, about 6 a.m. The high priest, along with the teachers of the law, and the whole assembly brought me this man. They said, we found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Christ, a king. Luke 23:2. I was intrigued by this claim that he was a king. So I questioned him on whether he was a king or not. He said his kingdom was not of this world, and everyone on the side of truth listens to him. I laughed and said, what is truth? John 19:37-38. I was convinced that the Sanhedrin handed him over to me out of envy, and since there was a custom during the feast of Passover to release one prisoner, I asked if they wanted to release Barnabas or Jesus, who is called Christ. Matthew 27:17. While sitting on the judgment seat, my wife came in and said to me, "Don't have anything to do with this innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." Matthew 27:19. It was then that the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barnabas instead of Jesus. I was shocked by their pure hatred for this man. I asked them what they wanted to do with Jesus, and they all said, "Crucify him." I tried to talk them out of it, but they just shouted louder, "Crucify him." I knew I was getting nowhere with the mob, so I took a basin of water and washed my hands in front of the crowd. I told them, "I am innocent of this man's blood." Matthew 27:24. Even though I was in charge, I did not feel like I was in charge. I also did not feel like the high priest and the Sanhedrin was in charge, or even the mob. I still remember the last words that he said to me. I was boasting about my power to release him, and Jesus told me, "You will have no power over me if it were not given to you from above." John 19:11. There was something or someone greater who was in charge of this day, something or someone greater than me, greater than the crowd that screamed. So I released Barabbas. I had Jesus flogged, and then I handed him over to be crucified. Yes, my name is Pilate, and I was there.
My name is Barabbas, and I was there. I was a petty, notorious criminal, if I must say so myself. I was arrested for being part of the insurrection in the city and for murder. On the morning I was scheduled to be crucified, I was led with this other prisoner, the one they called Jesus the Christ. We were brought before Pilate, who had us stand before a large crowd. I had no idea what we were doing there until Pilate asked the crowd, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?" Matthew 27:17. Wow, I could not believe what I was hearing. Pilate said that he found no crime in this Jesus, and I know that I was guilty of high crimes, yet the crowd chose me. Why would they choose me? I remember how excited I was when the guards told me that I was free to go. But when I looked back, I saw an innocent man was taking a cross that belonged to me. I felt such freedom, but at the same time, I felt so undeserving. Jesus took my place. Yes, my name is Barabbas, and I was there.
I am from the North African town of Cyrene, which is located in present-day Libya. My name is Simon, and I was there. I came to Jerusalem with my 2 sons, Alexander and Rufus, to celebrate the Jewish Passover. We were passing on our way from the country when we saw a great crowd that had gathered. My sons and I went over to see while the crowd was yelling, and I'll never forget what I saw. 3 men were being led down the middle of the street as Roman guards whipped them. Each were forced to carry a large cross upon their shoulders. The first 2 were very loud and rebellious, but the third one looked like he did not belong there. He looked like he had been beaten so bad I could hardly even tell he was a man. He was really struggling to carry his cross, and the more that he stumbled, the more the crowd yelled at him, and the guards beat him with a whip. I could not stop wondering what this man had done to deserve this kind of punishment. When all of a sudden a Roman guard grabbed my arm and commanded that I help the man carry his cross. I bent down and lifted the cross off the shoulders of this man they called Jesus. He just looked at me, not wanting to let go of the cross. He embraced it. So we walked together up the road to a place called Golgotha. I remember as we reached the top of that hill, seeing them nail this man's hands and feet to the cross. I never met Jesus until that day, but my life will never be the same. Yes, my name is Simon, and I was there.
We live in Jerusalem, the epicenter of religious law. The Jewish law forbids anyone from showing sympathy to a condemned man, but this man was different. We remember when he came into Jerusalem less than a week ago. Our homes are right on the main road of the city, so we saw many people as they came to Jerusalem for the Passover. We remember as he passed by our houses that day. When we first saw him, he was riding on a donkey. Some believed that this was to fulfill the words of the old prophet Zechariah. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Zechariah 9:9. The crowd was very large. People were spreading their cloaks on the road, and some were cutting palm branches and spreading them on the road. We can still hear the cheers. Hosanna, the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. Matthew 21:9.
But today was much different. There was no joy in cheering. A large crowd of people were angry as they led 3 criminals to be crucified. It was hard for us to believe that this was the same person who the crowds cheered less than a week ago. We could not recognize him because he had been beaten so badly. He was weak and exhausted, and the cross was far too heavy. It broke our hearts when he was crucified under the weight. Surely this man was innocent. Surely he did not deserve this punishment. The Roman soldiers forced a foreigner to carry his cross for him. We wanted to do something for him as well, but all we could do was weep.
No one ever recognizes us, but this man did. He turned to us and spoke directly to us. We will never forget those words. Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. Luke 23:28. He called us the daughters of Jerusalem, just like the old prophet Zechariah called us. Could this Jesus really be the king who brings salvation? It was easy to see his suffering that day, but somehow he saw our suffering. Maybe this Jesus fulfills the words of another prophet. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. Isaiah 53:4-5. We are the daughters of Jerusalem, and yes, we were there.
I steal things. That is what I do. I am a thief. But I got caught. Now I'm paying for my crimes. My punishment? Crucifixion at the hands of the Romans. I'm a thief, and I was there. There was actually two of us there that day. We definitely deserved the punishment that we were getting. But this other guy, the one they called Jesus the Christ, he had done nothing wrong. I was surprised that no one was yelling at us that day. Everyone's attention was on the man from Galilee. They spit on him, they mocked him. In fact, the other thief and I joined the crowds in their insults of this man. The thing that changed my mind, indeed changed my life, was when the fellow Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Luke 23:34. How could a person who has suffered so much be that forgiving? He never once opened his mouth in rebuke, but spoke gentle to all those around him. My heart was convicted, so I said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He told me, "Today I'll be with him in paradise." Luke 23:42-43. I know that I had just accepted Jesus on my own deathbed, but it was the greatest decision I ever made. I am proof that it is never too late to receive Christ as your Savior. Yes, I'm a thief, and I was there.
I was a centurion guard. My name alone meant that I was a captain of 100 men in the Roman army. I do not know why I was there. There were obviously lower ranked soldiers who could have done this job today, but these were my orders. I am a centurion guard, and I was there. This was supposed to be an easy money today. I was responsible for guarding the crucifixion of 3 criminals. My job was easy. No one was to interfere with the punishment that had been decreed. The crowd was much larger than I was used to. They were all there to see only one of these criminals, the one they called Jesus. There were some women there, one particular who was in very great sorrow. I'm guessing that woman was his mother. This man kept stumbling under the weight of his cross, so I forced a man from the crowd to help carry his cross. When they arrived at the place called Golgotha, it was I who nailed this one to the cross. I also nailed a written notice of the charges against him, the King of the Jews. I remember thinking, this guy sure does not look like a king. I laughed as a couple of my comrades and I cast lots for his clothing. Needless to say, I was completely shocked when from noon until 3, the whole sky became dark. It was like the sun just stopped shining. I even heard that the curtain in the temple was torn in 2. After seeing these things for myself, I knew certainly this man was innocent. Luke 23:47. Yes, I am a centurion guard, and I was there.
I don't like to brag, but I was the disciple that Jesus loved the most. I was one of the first to follow Jesus. I saw his miracles firsthand. Last night, Jesus ate a meal with us, and I sat right next to him in the seat of honor. My name is John, and I was there. All the other disciples ran away, but I stayed. I watched as they led him down the road to Golgotha and nailed him to the cross. I was standing by his mother, and Jesus looked directly at us. He said to his mother, "Woman, behold your son." Then he said to me, "Behold your mother." John 19:26 and 27. I pray that I can love his mother as much as he loved me. My name is John, and yes, I was there.
My name is Joseph. I'm from a small town called Arimathea, and I was there. I was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly, because I was also a respected member of the ruling council. I saw the mockery of this trial that they put Jesus through, but I did not consent with their decision or their actions. I was appalled at the brutality in which they beat him. I felt so powerless to defend him. Normally, when criminals were crucified, they were just thrown in a mass grave to be devoured by scavengers. I felt like Jesus deserved much better than that. I went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus so that I could give him a proper burial. But he did not believe me that Jesus was already dead. So he inquired of his soldiers and asked if what I said was true. They pierced Jesus in his side, confirming that indeed he was dead, and they released his body to me. It was already getting late, so I took him down from the cross, and I wrapped him in a linen cloth and laid him in a tomb that had been cut into the rock. I remember seeing his body for the last time as I rolled that large stone in front of the tomb. My name is Joseph, and I was there.
My name is Mary from Magdala. My heart is so broken today because the one I love is hanging on a cross. Jesus once said, "He who is forgiven much loves much, but he who is forgiven little loves little." Luke 7:47. I followed Jesus because I loved him greatly. If my love for Jesus was graded by how much he forgave me, then I loved him more than any. I was tormented by 7 demons. My life was full of darkness and pain. But in a moment's time, Jesus changed my life. Jesus commanded the demons to leave me. He spoke light into my life. I followed Jesus because it brought me such joy to see Jesus heal people of various diseases. I saw crippled people walk, and I heard mute people speak. My favorite was when he healed those possessed by demons. I rejoiced with them because I remembered my darkness and the relief I felt when Jesus freed me. Today, I stand next to the only person who might have loved him more, his mother and the other women who followed him from Galilee. My name is Mary Magdalene, and yes, I was there.
My name is Mary. Jesus is my son, and I was there. My mind races with so many thoughts. I can't seem to make any sense of what has happened this day. Didn't Gabriel tell me he was to be great and be called the Son of the Most High, and the Lord God will give to him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end? Luke 1:32. Did I misunderstand him? As I stand here, helpless in my mind's eye, I see this precious son of mine as I held him in my arms, brushing my cheeks softly against his delicate newborn skin and smelling the freshness of his tiny warm body against mine. My mind races forward to happy memories of him, taking his first teetering, stumbling steps, filled with gleeful joy as I watch him grow. Today, my heart sank to depths unimaginable as I watched him stumbling under the weight of the cruel, splintered cross he was being forced to carry, all bloodied, beaten, and battered, unrecognizable. But to me, his mother, I knew it was him. How can this be part of the plan? As I stood at the foot of his cross, I raised my eyes to those beautiful eyes I've known from the very beginning of his life. And despite the pain and agony he was in, he took the time and labored breaths to charge John, his devoted disciple and friend, with my care when he was gone. John 19:26 and 27. Even though he was bearing the weight of the world upon his shoulders. I waited till the bitter end, waited until the angry crowds were gone and the Roman soldiers had finished their duty, and allowed me to cradle my son's lifeless body one last time. This must have been what Simeon meant when he told me at the temple all those years ago. Behold, this child is appointed for the fall and rising of many in Israel, and for a sign that he opposed, and a sword will pierce through your own soul also, so that thoughts from many hearts may be revealed. Every fiber of my being is numb from having to witness my firstborn son endure such agony, such suffering, watching, not able to buffer his anguish. Helpless, oh my heart, how it bleeds for him. Surely this isn't the end. Surely his Father has a purpose and a plan larger than my mind can conceive. I must believe. I must hold on to the hope that this excruciating day wasn't the pinnacle of it all. I am Mary. Jesus was my son. I was there when he took his first breath, and yes, I was there when he took his last.
I heard him say from the cross, "It is finished." Is that the end of the story? We hope for the dawning of a new day. We hope for God to bring joy out of sorrow. But today, go home. There's nothing more to see here. Jesus is dead.